Thank you very much. It's an honor to represent the distinguished class of 1967. I wish I'd spoken first, quite frankly. My speech is going in a little bit different direction, and Francesca, you did a great job, and again, it's quite a hurdle to try to match that. Before I start, I want to share a feeling I've had to see if others have had the same sort of experience. I have been blown away, literally blown away, with how rapidly I can be transported back in time, telling stories, reliving events, and completing sentences that have been on ice for 50 years, like they just happened last week. As long as I don't look in the mirror and see this face, I have been able to maintain this somewhere in time Christopher Reeves illusion for the better part of 3 days. The simple truth is, nothing makes you feel younger than being with people who actually knew you when you were actually younger. Now, when I was called, asked to make some remarks, first I thought it was a joke, and was certain this was a put on by Janet McAdams or some other cabal here of our class. And I was very apprehensive about speaking. What was I going to talk about? I couldn't match Francesca. And then, to make matters worse, I got a call from Sally Crowden Barrett. Everybody knows Sally. She's not here. She just had her knee operated on, but her worthless husband is here. Denny's sitting right out there. And I'm sure he'll tell Sally what I said. But anyway, she called me about a week after I was told that I was asked to make some remarks. And Sally said, "Greg, I've known you for 54 years, and I've got a request." I said, "What's that, Sally?" She said, "Please, whatever you do, remain at all times politically correct and don't veer off color." I thought to myself, game, set, match. What was I going to talk about? Now, I get that being politically correct in today's world is mission critical. Colleges and universities across the country have set up safe zones where students are protected from offensive or inappropriate or even vulgar rhetoric. And colleges issue trigger warnings alerting students to the presence of people who look, act, or think differently from them. Now, back in our day, safe zones were where you could drink and not get caught by some campus gendarme. And trigger warnings were getting a call from some friendly KTK member telling you that tonight was the night that your fraternity was going to be raided in some surprise inspection looking for, yes, horror of horrors, women in your room or a keg somewhere down in the rec room. So I want to issue a trigger warning for all of you today. If you're looking for a safe zone, I suggest you leave now. Leave quickly before I either offend you or, worse yet, bore you to death. Now, I want to tell you about a call I got, about 6 months ago from a very good friend of mine, Dave Hoover. Now, everybody knows Dave and Suzanne Hoover. They've won every award and accolade DePauw has to give. They need no introduction. But I got this call from Dave, and I've known him before he was, a man among men. And he called, and I thought he was going to inquire about my health or my family or my business. And instead, Dave was dialing for dollars, looking to shake me down for some dough in advance of this 50th reunion. Now, Dave informed me on this call that he and Suzanne had coughed up 25 to 30 million bucks to build Hoover Hall. Now, I gotta tell you, I was very impressed when he told me that amount of money. And quite frankly, who wouldn't be who knew Dave back in the day? When I demurred and tried to change the subject, Dave turned relentless like a pit bull with a bone. And he said, "Greg, I want to tell you, while Suzanne and I we really love the name Hoover Hall, No surprise there. He said that I'm so committed to making DePauw successful and to expand that endowment that if you agree to cough up $10 million, Suzanne and I will agree to rename the building the Mutz Hoover Hall. The Mutz Hoover Hall? I said, Dave, you gotta be kidding. It sounds like a building housing stray dogs waiting to be neutered. Now, looking for some clever way to deflect Dave Hoover, who doesn't take no for an answer, I said, Dave, here's what you do. Why don't you call John Hinkey and Jack Hogan and hit them up for a king's ransom so you can rename the building the Hinkey Hogan Hoover Hall? The Hinkey, I know, the Hinkey Hogan Hoover sounds like one of these two-bit plaintiffs' law firms that airs their ads on the Sunday talk shows. Speaking of those Sunday morning news talk shows, I gotta tell you, it's impossible to ignore all the big pharma ads touting an array of pills, ointments, salves, and herbs. And lest anybody get confused, those are targeted to those of us in this room. Now, following each of these ads is a disclaimer read by somebody who trained as an auctioneer, who rattles off in staccato fashion all of the terrible, horrible things that will happen to you if you partake of this particular medicinal remedy. Now, there is one ad that does not follow this prescription. It's where the disclaimer is really the marketing hook. Now, I admit, I perk up every Sunday morning when one of those ubiquitous relationship enhancement ads has an announcer that concludes and slows down the warning and says, if you have a 4-hour side effect, please proceed immediately to the emergency room and seek prompt medical attention. Now, I, as a business guy, tip my hat to the marketing genius who figured out how to unleash a surge of purchasing power simply by stating all the horrible things that can happen from usage of this particular drug. Now, you may laugh, but there's some very important and serious policy and political questions that this issue raises. First, is this terrible affliction covered by Obamacare? Second, are Trump and the Freedom Caucus seriously considering doing away with the reimbursement for this national pandemic? And lastly, where do Bill and Hillary Clinton stand on the issue of 4-hour side effects? Now, I want to turn serious for a moment. I really do, please. I want to turn serious for a moment. Each person in this room at some point has had a rainy day. Every life doesn't work out perfectly, and no life works out just the way we thought it would the day we graduated from DePauw. Life's a wonderful gift, and yet life at the same time is a roll of the dice. As for me, I have 3 biological kids and 6 stepkids, so you can see I've been much more adept at building a family through merger and acquisition than I have the old-fashioned way by breeding. Now, I am twice widowed, and no question in my life that losing and having to bury 2 wonderful women who died way too young in their lives were my rainy day, my very rainy day. However, the sun came out for me, and I imagine it has for most of us who've had a rainy, nasty day. And I'm now married to Laura Mutz. She couldn't be here. Her mother the nursing home said she had to go to a different room, so she's down. You know, we're all going to get there someday where you got to wear a diaper and throw away the Flomax, and anyway, you're fighting it as best you can. But she's my best friend, and my life has worked out. The mother of my 3 kids was Jeannie Simmons. a Kappa from the class of '67, our class. For everyone who knew Jeannie, she was a wonderful woman with a terrific and high energy zest for life. We were married for 16 great years. Jeannie died of cancer in 1991 after a long and very difficult struggle. 68 members of the class of '67 are not with us today. So whether good genes or good luck, we are indeed fortunate to have been able to live our lives and enjoy all the good times that we have had. Any regrets? Oh, for sure. Each one of us would do one or two things a little bit differently if we had it to do over again. But as they say down the road in Cloverdale, no one runs the sausage machine backwards and reclaims that squeal. I'm surprised to see Hoover laughing so hard, you know. Any failures? You bet. Each one of us has screwed up a time or two, but as Thomas Edison said, he said, I've never, ever made a mistake. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. Any challenges? You bet. I imagine we've all learned that we grow more when the road is strewn with potholes than we grow when we are on the beach frolicking and having fun. As for me, I grew more rapidly in my 1 year in Vietnam as an infantry lieutenant, seeing and yes, doing things that I never, ever thought imaginable when I was a fido on Anderson Street. The simple truth is, I imagine that each one of us in the class of '67 realized we grew the most when we were tested the most. Now let's have some fun. Let's compare DePauw of our day to the DePauw of today. I want to first take a close look at dating. Since women in men's rooms back in our era was a capital crime, and since all women had to be under lock and key by 12:30, the last 15, 20 minutes, maybe for Janet, 30 or 40 minutes of any date took place on the porch of some sorority house in the midst of a mob of 20 to 30 other sweaty, groping couples. I particularly remember the bells and chimes ringing at 12:30 announcing that all decent, God-fearing women had to be inside or face public humiliation. Actually, these ringing bells served only to trigger a romantic climax, figuratively, of course. In preparation for that last kiss, if our kids and grandkids could see Grandma and Grandpa warming up for that final smooch, I gotta tell you, viral doesn't do justice to what would happen with those lip-bruising scenes going to the internet world of today. Now let's look at the 5 biggest changes between what we studied as kids here and what kids study today. Communication majors exploded from only 6 in our class to 72 today. Computer science majors went from 0 in our class to 55 today. Econ and management majors doubled from 44 to 88. And listen to this, history majors fell from 55 in our class to only 11 today, and poli-sci majors fell from 39 to 13. Now, I don't know what these changes, these Teutonic changes in what kids study says about us or about the kids today, but I can tell you, old President McCoy here is turning out a whole lot of kids that are computer geeks who are very good communicators who are bound and determined to go into business to make a buck. Now, let me wrap up my spiel. 2 things have happened, I think, since we graduated that we should acknowledge. The first, notwithstanding my cheap shot earlier, Hoover Hall is a terrific addition to the campus, and due to the generosity of Dave and Suzanne, I want to tell you something. No matter how much Dave raises, and I imagine he's going to shake every one of you down, he's not going to change the name of Hoover Hall. So that is going to be the name now and forevermore. The second change I want to highlight is one of the best changes that I think has occurred for the best in the last 50 years. In the class of '67, 15% of us were on a varsity sports team. Today, in the class of '17, 39% of the kids are on a varsity sports team. You say, how come there's been this explosion in participation on the varsity sports teams? One answer, Title IX that was adopted in 1972. Embarrassingly, there was no opportunity to participate in athletics for the women in our class. The simple truth is there was inequality of athletic opportunity. Any man who thinks women are the weaker sex, quite frankly, has simply never been married. Today, DePauw women athletes are doing a terrific job of winning races and scoring points and being named as MVPs all-conference and as All-Americans. In our class, 80 guys lettered. My guess is in our class there's 80 women who would have lettered, and there's likely 3 or 4 who would have been outstanding in their sport, would have their pictures and athletic exploits touted in the DePauw Sports Hall of Fame if only they had been allowed to participate. Unfortunately, we don't know who those women were that had this exceptional, unusual athletic talent. So I propose today that all the women of the class of '67, please stand. We're going to recognize all the women in the class. Please, all the women. No, Suzanne, stay up. You could have, come on, stand up. You are looking, folks, at a whole lot of talent that went untested, went unrecognized, and went unnoticed. Ladies, today you are indeed recognized as athletic giants. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Greg.